And I'm inclined to agree. And we were trying to piece together why. And that's the more interesting part.
Okay. We are live, so we can go ahead and get this started. But yeah, so I think first off, right, we need to point out the most revolutionary potential does come from, well, again, the rural working class. This has been historically proven throughout every single socialist revolution that's occurred, right? Is historically the ones who have the most revolutionary incentive are the ones who have not yet been a modernized, developed class. This is not to say that it's ignoring capitalism at its highest stage, or that the working class will eventually revolt at the contradictions of capitalism, because again, there's a big difference between the peasantry revolutions of the Bolsheviks, of China, and of the rest of the third world, and of a revolution occurring in the modern day. The reason that we don't have the grounds for revolution in America right this very moment is not the numbers of socialist, Marxist, Leninist, or communist out there. The numbers are well there enough to even to at least get a revolution started. Okay, it's a density problem. Where are these people located? How are their lives affected on a day-to-day basis? Are they students or are they actual workers? Are they living in high taxation areas, or are they living in low taxation areas? Are they being directly affected by the workplace environment, or are they underdeveloped and are they working themselves? Do they have to produce their own labor through other methods, right? And these all play into, I think, historically what we've seen with like the Black Panther Party, with a lot of the civil rights activism that's occurred in America, with people like Martin Luther King Jr., right? These people who have played a significant role in socialist development in America, where they were touching people the most, and specifically not just where they were touching people, but the kinds of people that they were touching. Often we talk about how like there's this kind of divide between the North and the South in America. This has been a historical driver of what defines America. The South has always kind of been more conservative, Republican, right wing leaning, agricultural based. The other has always been kind of more liberalized, industrialized, capitalized, and this plays an important role in understanding how socialist movements would develop, not just in the United States, but I think also within North America in general. Because even look at Canada compared to Mexico, Canada is far more industrialized and modernized and capitalized. Mexico is still to this day very oriented around farmland, and even when you take out those kind of variables, they're not really industrial, but there are a lot of finance and kind of drug trades that occur, right? So there's definitely one that is a bit more underdeveloped and one that is a bit more developed. I do see an interesting thing happening in my state, for example. I live in Florida, as I think you all know, right? And living in the state that I live in, there is a generational gap between the rich and the middle class and even the poor. Mainly speaking about how this state has oriented itself around being the retirement state, the tourist state for that matter, the people who come here and live here, the residents for the most part are very wealthy, rich old people who have settled their lives and who pretty much prospered during a time of America where they didn't have to worry about the conditions. And so they pretty much guaranteed their life, um, their life situations. Today, that can't happen for the vast majority of the younger generation because the conditions that existed in the 70s, 80s, and even some of the early 90s, those don't exist today. Those really haven't even existed since the 2008 economic crisis, which, looking at that, right, millennials, a lot of millennials are still suffering from that.
Yep, I lost all my shit in 2008 and I never got it back.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's interesting to see this because one thing that this kind of generational wage and wealth gap has produced is a cycle of repetition where people fall into the same repetitive patterns. If you're rich, well, you're always going to produce a richer environment for yourself, for your inheritance, for the legitimacy of your own success, while also you will be generating and reproducing a cycle of exploitation and extraction from the lower class. If you're born into a lower class situation, well, you're only ever going to be at most getting a blue collar, low end of a blue collar workforce job. And even then, it comes at the expenses of you ending up in debt, you ending up in multiple scenarios of where you don't actually have the financial ability to even perform that job and be able to benefit from the reapings of that job. So that's what I mean by, will we see this generational gap? And that's the repetition that we see, is them reproducing the conditions in which they exist in today. So applying that to the socialist movements that could develop in the South, we understand well enough being socialist, especially if you're in a northern state or in a more like populous city, right? You understand that you were, for the most part, are a student, or that the vast majority of the people that you surround yourself with are either freshly out of college, or you guys are actively only going to be able to do things through electoralism. You will have no actual revolutionary potential or immediate revolutionary effect if you are in a city and you are engaging in communist, socialist, political movements. This also comes down to the fact that, again, well, these more progressive areas also have things like gun restrictions, have a lot of issues with capital and corporate monopolies, right? So things that all create and kind of restrict those very prominent socialist organizations to actually be able to do things at a sufficient rate. That's why the best of the ability of socialist organizations is spreading awareness and producing class consciousness to the rural, low-end suburbanoid working class, because they have the most revolutionary potential and the greatest capability of being able to produce revolutionary outcomes.
Yeah, also there's more mass surveillance in cities, and there's also a higher concentration of law enforcement in the police.
Absolutely. And right now, where we are living in the fascist system that we do, and if you deny that we are living under fascism today, that's just cope. Because the political reality is that we are living in an oligarchy, we are living in a discriminatory environment, the very active use of the military under the excuse of national crisis, the mass deportation. At the same time, you're not deporting immigrants as general. You're just deporting the poor ones who have no benefit to whatsoever, right? So that you can further exploit your own workers, because you could care less if rich Indians come over and keep displacing your American workers. You could care less about that. It's just a matter of the profit cycle. So yeah, these people that are prominent, these socialists that do exist, these Marxists that do exist that are prominent, they have a lot going against them in the areas there that they're prominent in.
Yeah, the only reason why urban centers are more progressive is because that's where universities are concentrated in, and the union concentrated their efforts in building infrastructure in the university.
Right.
And we also saw how that turned out.
I think what's kind of interesting is you look at most major college campuses, and we can even look at basic sentiment from speaking about the genocide, right, to Trump, like people protesting about Trump. We've seen it before. He's used he's used full on SWAT teams, right, to like push off and antagonize people who were crowding around him and protesting. They didn't do anything politically violent or extremist. They were just there expressing their First Amendment right, and he used police brutality. They do this all the time. The Democrats do this all the time in college campuses. They send police brutality in so that they can kind of diminish college students from actually being able to speak out against the active financing of a genocidal regime. So it kind of is strange. On one end, liberals will admit that we are living under fascism, that fascism is absolutely immoral, but at the same time, they will fundamentally justify being the police of the world, intervening in these countries to supposedly make them better and to supposedly improve their conditions so that they don't have to come here and worsen ours. But that's not the reality. The reality is that when Democrats justify imperialist means, they're actually justifying racial and discriminatory rhetoric that the Republicans use for their nationalistic purposes. So they kind of play off of one another, trying to give the delusion that they're separate or that they're opposing each other's values, but their actions more often than not, don't show that they're opposing, but rather show that they are actively working to aid one another.
And another thing that links to your point is the fact that white flight is going actually towards the cities, the urban areas, and a lot of minorities are moving out towards the suburbs and rural areas for some reason. And that's another thing that adds to the revolutionary potential.
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly, when we talk about revolutionary America, it's also important to visualize what this will turn out to be, because actually, I was posed a question a few days ago: if a civil war were to happen in America, what would it look like? Because existing in America today, there is not a solid line between the South and the North, at least in the sense that there's not really a huge line drawn in the development of these groups. However, I do believe that the working class needs to be inspired and educated by a group of intellectuals, by a class of intellectuals. I don't oppose the intellectualist class, because the intellectualist class is actually at odds ends with the profit motive. Because at the end of the day, they support technocratic, meritocratic systems. The profit incentive and monopolization of capital fundamentally rejects that. By finding corporate greed, by politicians and right-wing right-wing reactionaries implementing people that they can easily control through populist tactics, the intellectual class is always going to be against them, is always going to have an enemy on that side. So they can be a class ally. In many cases, they have been historically too. Hell, the vanguard party of the Bolsheviks was even inspired from a growing intellectualist period of the Tsarist regime. Lenin and the Bolsheviks were often considered the intellectualist of the Soviets. I know federal workers too, who are also being directly affected by some of the current changes in America and the American economy. For example, Trump attempting to freeze all federal aid. Now there is a judge who has temporarily blocked this, but the effectiveness of this is not really solid. There's still a lot of things that he's progressing on in his plan to stop it. And with that being said, for one, we already know that the legal protections of these workers have been stripped away. The very incentive for why people get federal jobs in the first place is the job security and the federal aid, but all of that's been taken away. We are seeing a federal workers union for these federal jobs, for these governmental jobs, which I think this will be interesting, seeing as these are more meritocratic, technical career fields. These people kind of have a vital role in combating the structure of the current oligarch. Because at the end of the day, Elon doesn't care for these people. Elon is inspiring Trump to do exactly what he did with all his Twitter employees. Actually, federal employees got an email that kind of states exactly what kind of happened with Twitter. You either voluntarily resign or they're going to fire you anyways. And that's the issue, is there is no incentive anymore for these people to work. So the best that they can do is they can unionize, which there's battles there happening and occurring. A lot of them are actually going against the things that Trump wants done, because some of them, despite your opinions, whether you're a constitutionalist or not, for the most part, federal employees are abide to some degree of respect and honor towards like the Constitution. So a lot of them, I think, have the sentiment that since things are being like violated and constitutional rights are being violated, that they're not going to follow executive order. We'll see. I think that they need to come to a consolidation with the rural working class. And once the rural working class is aware that conditions are worsening, that conditions aren't going to get better, once they can reap up the ability to become revolutionary, the intellectualist class will have to lead them in a aiming direction towards the ruling class. How that's going to formulate, I think that that's still to be unfolded. But yeah, that's kind of where I have put my 2 cents so far. Anybody want to come up?
I'm afraid for one.
I'm just gonna listen because I'm not knowledgeable enough. Sorry.
Silva, come up here. How do I?
Sure, I can come up to the stage. What's up?
Yeah. How are you, Alistair?
I'm doing good. I'm just kind of listening. I was just kind of listening to you guys talk while I was programming something. But yeah,
generally just talking about revolutionary America.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing about the conditions with the United States and the executive orders that are basically being tossed around left and right. I think Trump is basically doing the throw as much shit to the wall as possible and see what sticks. Okay, see what people tolerate. Okay, because I was talking with my girlfriend about the whole trans thing. Why is it now outlawed at 19 instead of 18? You're considered a fully legal adult at 18. Hell, you can join the Marines at 17. But 19 is an oddly specific number, and I think they're just basically testing the waters to see what they can get away with when it comes to banning trans people. And 19 was a specific number is because, that's not, the legal adult age. That's not 18. That's a year above it.
Right.
Yeah, they
But
talked
also
about
feels like a
this
bit of
in
a
Project
shame.
2025 already.
It also
Yeah.
feels like a bit of a shade of Canada in a way too, because that's usually the legal age of a lot of things, like recreational stuff and a lot of other things that you would get. That also does feel a bit like a shade against Canada.
Well, this was laid out in Project 2025 in the executive supremacy. What was it called specifically? Unitary executive theory. That's right. And part of it, like specifically, that does talk about how the president can push the current boundaries put on the executive branch by breaking the law day one in ways that would not cause much government intervention, because you would already have control solidified, as they predicted in Project 2025. And this is laid out, and what they're doing is they are pushing the boundary and testing the waters so they can get away with more and more.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And the irony of this whole thing, right, is you speak to any Republican, MAGA, Trump diehard supporter, and they still to this day are saying, oh, well, he's not actually going through with Project 2025. Oh, he's not actually going to do this. Oh, he was just trying to scare everybody. He was just trying to do that to show
My
how
pinned tweet
weak
had Polish
Democrats are.
Bolshevik basically saying that he was not going to go through it, and it's just a big scare. And I still have that tweet. In a couple of weeks, I'll probably respond as so he's not going to go through with Project 2025, huh?
I mean, dude literally told us this his first year around, right? His first election, right? We all knew that he was going to do this eventually. Like he was telling us. He wasn't trying to hide it. He's not trying to hide it now, because here's the fact. Here's the biggest fact that people need to get through their heads. The man is exactly the pitch perfect image of what neoliberal capitalism promises capitalists that they can and will become at their most developed stage. That is what he is. And it is because of that he has an antagonistic behavior to combat and absolutely refuse any revolutionary working class interest.
The one way we could turn the public sentiment against the Republicans, I was talking with this a little bit a while ago about the whole insult game against right-wingers, is that Libs of TikTok was having a meltdown over some woman making fun of RFK's disability or whatever, right? Low blow, low-grade humor. This is the shit you'd see on Xbox Live kind of stuff, right? I insulted Columbia Cuck Machine on my YouTube Shorts feed. Got a reaction out of him, right? Okay, the best way we can take down the right is expose their hypocrisy, and that's the funny part, right? We have to basically break the rules of what it means to be leftist, is because the thing is, those rules don't matter anymore. Okay, being politically correct in this age, it's not even relevant. The corporations aren't enforcing this stuff anymore. In fact, they're enabling racist. I came across a YouTube video, where shit. Let me see if I have it. I put it in the video doc stuff. I might roast this guy, but it was celebrating and mocking people who are getting deported, and just showcasing people who are crying about being deported and stuff like that. All the white nationalist talking points in there, making fun of socioeconomic condition arguments by liberals and stuff like that. Stuff I didn't expect to see since 2017. Okay, and so the whole politically correct culture is quite literally what's holding us back. It's holding us back from it keeps us from pulling our punches. We're pulling our punches when we're fighting the right. But it's not only that, right? Is because the thing is first off, before I get into the second topic, I want to finish up the first topic, okay? When it comes to insulting right-wingers. You ever notice it when you are talking with a right-winger, and you were trying to make logical points? A lot of times they'll just insult you, or they won't even engage with the ideas, right? Notice every single time when you insult the right-winger back and you get them good, and you make a good insult with them, how all of a sudden say, like, this is not an argument, you're just insulting people. They go full meltdown mode whenever you insult them, okay? And then they start saying, well, you have to make a logical argument. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You make a logical argument, they're just going to make fun of you and insult you, and they're not even going to engage it. How you fucking commie? But if you just insult them, at least you can get them to melt down and get a couple of laughs for about 15 minutes. But the second topic I kind of wanted to talk about is I lost my train of thought. Probably come back to me in a couple of minutes.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
The other thing with like corporations, right?
Yeah.
They're encouraging racist behavior and shit. Yeah, part of the reason why is because when they do this, like when they get rid of all these labor laws, they can get away with not having to pay workers compensation.
Yep, and that's where
entirely it.
Yeah, and that's where our pragmatism is going to have to come into play, okay? Because if we're going to meaningfully counter this, like the only way to stop them is to hit them where their wallet is, dude. Okay, you have to do labor strikes. You have to do tenant strikes, saying like, if you don't capitulate to these conditions, we just don't show up to work and we form a picket line.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And
like that's the only thing you can do. You have to be pragmatic. Finger wagging doesn't work. We're talking about a class that when they're getting away with it, they'll kill the homeless on like a New York subway and just kind of laugh about it, right? These people, they laugh at your suffering, man. They're evil fucking people.
And I'm just gonna let everybody like right here, right now, know we all need to be keeping our eye out, because this is the period of time in America where the petite bourgeois, where the small business owner, they are going to be showing their true intentions. All these franchise business people who own like small degree of property in like franchise companies, they're going to have an antagonistic behavior towards siding with the bourgeois, with the capitalist. And here's why: because they are just above a blue collar worker's job. Okay, they are not going to be affected by your work conditions whatsoever, and they know it. They know deep down when these tariffs come into place, and income tax and product and product taxes all being rose, and you have to purchase these products at a higher cost. They're not going to be affected by that. They're going to be the ones encouraging it.
It's going to send the American people over the edge. That's another interesting point. Now that you're talking about inflation and prices, right? The myth of the minimum wage. Because our entire lives, and I used to believe this too, because I was always told by my conservative parent, if you raise the minimum wage, it's going to cause inflation. And that's intuitive, right? First and foremost, that just indicates that the capitalist class doesn't produce any value, because if the inflationary effects coming from the cost of the worker, that tells you that the bourgeois class is just a parasite middleman. And on top of that, right, inflation has already surpassed income regardless of raising the minimum wage. All this stuff is happening independent of the minimum wage. That just goes to show you that a lot of the stuff they're talking about is bullshit. Because they raised up prices without income catching up to it. That's the insane part.
Hello, Trick. You have something that you wanted to say?
Oh, you're not explaining. Okay, we need to go. You made 92. Okay, you're not going to go past 92 this way. Stay down here.
Matty Q, I can hear your background. Are you?
Yeah, you're bleeding, Matty. I'm at work.
Hi.
Hi.
What's up?
I just want to say something.
Okay.
Okay, just before. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind, you can always destroy this with a boomer.
Yeah.
In 1965, okay, gold and 1 ounce of gold was $35 an ounce and some change, right? Okay, and minimum wage, okay, was $1.25 an hour. If you take 35 and divide it by $1.25, you'll get 28 and some change. Okay. Okay. Now go ahead and take the current price of an ounce of gold and divide that by 28 and some change, and that's how much the hourly wage was untaxed at minimum wage. That's how much it was worth, at least in gold value, if you use the gold index. Now, the last time I did this, when the price was reasonable, was when gold was at $18.30 an ounce. Okay, and you get about $65 an ounce. I mean, $65 an hour untaxed. Okay, right, because that's minimum wage. So you can always use that index, right, to like destroy, like, so. Shut the fuck up, Maddie.
Hey, chill, man. It's all good.
Chill the
Yeah,
fuck out.
yeah. Maddie's cool, but like that's kind of the thing. Here, I'll just move. Maddie, I'm gonna mute you for a little bit, but you can unmute yourself because you got server perms. But yeah.
So
Okay, rolling that back.
you can always use that, just that index. Like, fuck the Big Mac and all the other rigged shit that they say to you. Like, just use that gold index, and that just tells you. Okay,
I remember Damn Jehu. He used to be an infrared kind of guy, right? And so I was talking with him like a while ago, like about a year ago or so, I think more, because I haven't talked to him in ages, right? He didn't like my social progressivism. He's like, I ain't about that shit. He just kind of bounced off because he doesn't like social progressive politics. It's like, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me on that, whatever. But he put out an interesting study, but apparently, and this is speculation. I have to actually back this up. I might make a video on this. But the same amount of gold that you needed to buy a house in the 60s is the same amount of gold that you need to buy a house today. But the price of gold per ounce is $2,700 as of today. In the 1960s, it's like Trick said, it was like, what, $35, right? The thing is that like incomes and nominal value have not kept up, right? We like the thing is 6 figures today doesn't carry the same way it did in the 90s when gas was like $1 a gallon, right? When the average house price was was maybe like 100K or something like that, 120K. It wasn't that high, right? But inflation is one of those hidden things that you just kind of see that basically, while the value of the dollar goes down, your pay stays the same, prices go up, but you're being gaslit saying, oh, well, you're making like 80K, so you must be rich. I was coming across like an anti-Luigi post on Twitter the other day, and it was talking about if you make 140K a year, you're a part of the 1%. And I was thinking, wait a minute, what's the average income you need to own the average house to like even be considered eligible to get a home loan for it? I looked it up. It was like 106. Nowadays, you have to be a part of the 1% to actually own a home. That's the insane part that nobody wants to put in perspective.
Are you really part of the 1% if you make over that 140?
Yeah.
So here's
they
the
lied
thing.
with statistics. They were talking about the global 1%, right? But I mean, that's another entirely different discussion on like how currency like carry different weights within different countries.
Right.
So I want to put something into perspective for y'all.
Insane.
I want to put something into perspective for y'all. My junior year of high school, okay. This wasn't too long ago. I'm relatively young, okay. But my junior year of high school, I was in speech and debate all throughout my high school years. And I had a debate over human rights versus economic interest. Now, I, as a Marxist, have developed my opinions on that specific kind of contention, and I have a more developed understanding than I did back then. But one of the things that I came across as a part of being human rights were economic human rights, the access to healthcare, housing, and such forth, right? And an interesting phenomenon that I came across was the housing crisis that has existed in America for the last 2 decades. That has been really been happening since 2008. But for the last 2 decades, it's been very, very prominent. Now, the reason I bring this up is because when you look at the homeless population or the relative poverty population of America, it actually only is estimated to be between 300,000 to 500,000 Americans. That's relatively speaking, okay? Now, that doesn't equate for the general poverty that exists in America, but it's still a good estimate to understand what the ratio between the supply of houses in America and, well, the demand, right? So this is actually the funny thing is because often they talk about supply and demand as the market. They try to incentivize you. They say all the time, well, just build more houses and that would fix poverty, that would fix homelessness. But that's not the case in America. We don't have a huge demand to build houses, and people wonder why all the time. And their solution is always to build more houses for the homelessness. But the reason that there's not a huge demand to build houses is because we have an infinite supply. The issue is the 17 million empty homes in America are all owned by massive corporations that buy these properties out specifically for the usage
No,
of displacing
Here's
Americans.
someone from New York, or someone from New York a very long time ago in America came up with this idea already to fix this. It's called the land value tax.
So here's an interesting thing. Like a lot of people are also kind of forgetting as well that you might find some useful information here. But when it comes to new home construction, they're not building homes for families who are starting out who just want to get into the property market. They're building 3,000 square foot and upward, 500K plus houses. That because that's where a larger market is for a lot of property construction firms, because rich people have like this tons of money that they can afford it. They're not building homes for new families. That's the crazy part nobody talks about. I mean, they'll say it quietly if you have a conversation with like a real estate agent or something like that, but it's not something like a lot of people really talk about.
And like this is the issue. Corporate landlordism, the worst thing that's happened to America since the 2008 economic crisis. Which is funny because what happened after the 2008 economic crisis? Oh yeah, the government was forced into giving everybody their benefits back, but that was only a temporary solution until the banks could start raveling up again and start taking everything back and seizing all assets again, right? So we were falling right back into the same repetitive situations, and this is where I was talking about earlier. This was just before you came up to this stage, Alistair. The current class situation in America, the wealth disparity between the one percenters and the rest of the country, which by the way, the one percenters now have over 90% of concentration wealth in America. This is the thing. They create repetition to reproduce and ensure a inheritance of these conditions. So that's the thing, is until we can liberate the mindset of the blue collar worker to where they can actually fundamentally change their conditions and not be repetitive, not reproduce the situations that they create in for themselves to allow the bourgeois to continue to exploit them involuntarily, well, that's going to be where we start. That's where we have to stem revolutionary sentiment, is with these people, the people who have to deal with the housing crisis, who have to deal with the continuous destruction of education, that have to deal with the impossibility of a healthcare system in this country. These people, they're on the edge. They just need the nudge.
I think people are waking up to the fact that a handful of billionaires are quite literally playing Monopoly with our lives.
Like that's the thing, is I've been seeing lately on some of on my more personal social medias. I've been seeing more lately. A lot of the libertarians that I know have become very more appealing to the things that I've been posting about the oligarchy, about the concentration of wealth, about Elon, about these billionaire dipshits. Right? I've been seeing more people become open as libertarians. So,
yes, even Luigi Mangione was a libertarian. Okay, he was a right-wing libertarian. Okay, and here's kind of the thing: it doesn't matter what ideology you have. If you can't put food on your table, you can't get a roof over your head, and you're living paycheck to paycheck constantly, you're going to start feeling the communist vibes really quickly, and that's happening to a lot of people across all political spectrums. I don't care if you're a fascist, a libertarian, or whatever. Right? I've noticed this because I've talked with nationalists before. I've debated nationalists before, and now they've become far more sympathetic to a lot of left-leaning ideas, like you wouldn't believe, that wouldn't have even been possible 5 years ago.
Hey, Floor.
5 years ago, 2 years ago, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I absolutely. When I was in default server, like I tried to reason with them about, workers' democracy and stuff like that, and I got laughed out of a lot of servers and stuff. So yeah, no, absolutely. Even 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, like in 2022 or 2023.
It's not until it directly affects them that they start opening their eyes and starting to become more appreciative of this. I remember when uh, Richard E. Wolff's first book came out, people laughed in the face of his book because they were talking about, oh, well, democracy in the workplace, forget that. That's not going to work in America. Forget that. Oh, but now you see a lot more right-wingers becoming more appreciative of this idea of unionization and cooperative work environments. Well, this is because this is what's needed. This is the general sentiment. Until you can recognize and until you can feel it at face value. Actually, interestingly enough, I was having a conversation with one of my relatives that I live with, right? And we were getting to talking about, oh, well, these people that vote for Trump, these people that support him, they are hypocrites. And why are they hypocrites? Because they will not believe a thing you say until it directly affects them.
Yeah,
When it
but is that
affects
any
them
different than
directly,
is that out of line for historical materialism or dialectical materialism? I said earlier that, when it comes down to it, if one group of people can make a decent and comfortable living on the grave of another group of people, they'll do it. That there's plenty of instances throughout history that that's the case. Yes, it's morally hypocritical, but such is the way of life. If somebody can make a comfortable existence at the expense of somebody else, they will. That's what slavery is.
that is
okay?
the material reality that we live in. And understanding these compromises, these contradictions, right? Because that's what they are. They are contradictions which move in a dialectical flux, right? That project progress and development forward. And people come to realize these contradictions, whether they want to call them out for what they are, they still realize them at the end of the day. When you are working 40 to 50 hours a week, making hardly nothing, you're lacking healthcare, you're lacking barely being able to pay bills, you can hardly afford rent, or you can hardly afford groceries and have food on your table at night. You're working over hours, and this is difficulty. That is the material condition, the contradiction of capitalism that people feel fundamentally.
What I do notice, however, is that yes, I also believe that a lot of problems that we're seeing right now stem from capitalism. However, there is a big difference between what there's a big rise in far rightism. Sorry for my English. But what I do notice is that a lot of poor people definitely fall for the identity politics rhetoric that Trump has been spewing about immigrants taking their jobs and stuff like that. How, outside of, speaking about these subjects, how can we inform these large groups of poor people who do fall into that rabbit hole to realize that really capitalism is their enemy and class consciousness should be stimulated and not fall into the identity politics stuff, basically.
Well, I'll tell you how, okay? We're in a little bit of an unfortunate era because a lot of companies have gone turncoat. They've completely removed any kind of progressive policy that may have. Mark Zuckerberg is now glazing Donald Trump. You have Target removing anything referencing LGBTQ stuff, right? Okay. And on top of that, these same corporations also censor dissidents, okay? And unfortunately, we're a part of the dissidents now. We're no longer, they censor us. It's not a hidden fact anymore. And so the thing is that oh yeah, like they're never going to algorithm boost us. They'll algorithm boost some white nationalist on Twitter, complaining about black people or something. I'm still never not going to laugh at the fact that there was like some beautiful scenery about nature and some stupid wignat was basically somehow made it about black people. Never underestimate a wignat's ability to somehow find a way to complain about black people. But here's kind of the thing. You want to know how we can do it? How we're going to do it is word by mouth. That's all you can do. Okay. And the internet, it's a little bit easier to do that because it's much easier to brush up on controversial conversations that you can't necessarily do in polite conversation, a lot of, in real life social circles. And that's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to spread ideas. That's how we're going to change their mind. That's how we're going to help people understand what the real problem is. And you can only do that one person at a time.
But will that be enough? Because I mean, the right has been doing, has been spreading word of mouth for so long through memes, through various tactics of brainwashing, I would say even. Will our word of mouth be strong enough to overthrow theirs?
So
Well, that's why
here,
we have to have the right ideas that we can attack theirs and completely dismantle. That's why I focus so much on having the right ideas and attacking the political right. So somebody can easily start just fighting whatever I'm talking about and using an argument they're having with some nationalist or right winger.
right?
I had a gender criticalist, getting mad at me on my chat for my YouTube channel because they were like I was strawmanning GCs, which I wasn't. I was more or less addressing a kind of a hypocritical statement that a lot of gender criticalists have when they're talking about trans people and gender roles. But the thing is that when somebody is posturing and writing like 7,000 paragraphs in your comments section, they don't really have an argument against what you're saying. And so that's how those ideas are better than others. And so the thing is, and I've seen it, people have repeated what I said, used the arguments that I use. I don't even care about the credit, to be 100% fair. This isn't an ego thing. I genuinely want people to have the right arguments to actually win against arguments against, bad faith nationalists and right wingers. And so, it's spreading the ideas that's the most important thing. Getting the right arguments that you can use. You probably already noticed that as a communist, I'm not like all the other communists, right? A lot of them have excommunicated me. It's because I don't fall in line with what people want to believe. I tell them what is the truth and what I think is the best way to counter argue against the reactionaries and right wingers.
Here's why.
I've never been a fall in line kind of person. Yeah, a lot of the people. Yeah, Matty Q, you, Gamma, and a couple other people
Here's
in these
why.
circles, right?
Here's why. Because
they help me spread these ideas.
What is the fundamental dilemma that we recognize that the left is suffering from the most? It is the lack, and I've been saying this. I've been saying this for a while, and I know that you have too. There is my critique, okay, and this is I think it's still in my bio actually. I think I still have this in my bio. Yeah. So my analysis is a critique of the modern lack of critique. What I'm meaning at is the lack of original thought, the lack of being able to critique and being able to analyze and being able to construct new ideas through a dialectical process. The left cannot do this. They think being dialectical is regurgitating things that have already happened. They want to copy and paste Soviet Union or China to America, and that is fundamentally a rejection and ignorance and a vulgar misunderstanding of material conditions.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what it
like
is.
the conditions of our country are different from other people's countries. And, we can't just replicate the Soviet Union's experiment. They already collapsed, okay? And there are real reasons. A lot of Orthodox MLs will claim it's, my CIA or whatever, right? Okay, sure. A single country, I could agree with you on that. Okay, that's a color revolution. But when socialism covered a third of the world and it no longer exists today, and you got a handful of countries that are actually still having socialism in their countries, something went wrong. So what's wrong with the ideas? And that's where a level of introspection and honesty to evaluate these ideas and evolve them is needed, to be dialectical about these things. But the broader left doesn't see it that way. I've met the downright hostility towards unorthodox ideas. And that's kind of the thing, is because the left is so busy playing defensively when it comes to politics. I want to play offensively. I want to attack ideas that are different than mine. I don't want to just hand wave it and ignore it. And I've spent a good amount of time writing articles and making videos to do so. And the arguments have stuck to some degree. I was even on the politics server watching somebody use the arguments I made in one of my YouTube videos. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know, other people had watched it. And, must be spreading word by mouth. And that's good enough for me.
Yeah, and honestly, these are things. Go on, Fleur. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I have a question actually.
What's the question?
Okay. So when it comes to attacking, now we've seen the actual attack, the violent attack that allegedly was done by Luigi Mangione. It has already inspired other people to also attack, because there's been some news articles about people who have done violent attacks as well, claiming that they were inspired by Luigi. Of course, I don't condone violence, and I don't think any of you guys do either. But do you guys somehow still think, however, that these actions will have a positive impact on the movement? And if so, how?
I think
So,
a hyperfixation.
this is.
Oh.
You want to go first, American Marxist?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, go for it.
I think a hyperfixation on the Luigi issue will lead to more reactionary sentiment, and that's not taking away from the inspiration or the political reality of what Luigi stood for, because there are some very real things in which people are taking from Luigi that are worthwhile taking. But if you are going to hyper incentivize and hyper focus on him, and you're just going to start implementing kind of ultra right or not ultra leftist like kind of mentality, that becomes in a sense reactionary. But beyond that, I do see active work that people are dealing with to fight back. I mean, I'm seeing this with the federal government, with the government unions, right? With the government employee unions. This is something that is actively going on. There's a reason that Trump is targeting civil servants, because civil servants said before he even came into office, fuck you, we do not abide by anything you say. We will first and above all protect the Constitution. And he knew that they were going to be the biggest pain in his ass. Because why? There are 4 lines of defense in this country. 4 lines of defense against the oligarchy. Whether or not you think the system is fundamentally flawed and fundamentally structured towards a single class interest or not, there is a structure, and you have to peel apart the structure to actually understand why they are successful. So
to get back to the original question, I got some interesting things for you. Okay, all right. And I don't mean to be black pillar. I'm not trying to scare anybody when I say this. Okay, if Luigi has had a positive impact or nothing, or whatnot, right? Okay, I'm not trying to scare anybody in this chat. But the thing is that I'm not condoning violence either. Okay, but the thing is, I can also understand where it's coming from, what it's a reaction to. And so the thing about it is that the United States has had a 100-year policy since probably before, like around the start of the Cold War, of being incredibly draconian and cruel to class war politics. Okay, and so they're gonna fight tooth and nail to not give concessions. Okay, but the thing is, we don't live in the 1950s anymore. We don't live in the 1960s anymore. We don't have affordability. We don't. Trump just tried to rescind federal aid and grants. They're stripping like whatever nominal welfare programs that might exist, like Medicaid.
I understand that.
And so here's kind of the thing. And like I said, I'm not trying to sound like doomer pilled or scary or anything like that. But the thing is, you have what I've told Gamma this plenty of times. You have more or less an immovable object against an unstoppable force here. And I don't want to sound cringy because I hate making movie quotes and stuff like that. But you have an establishment that will budge for literally nothing because they've gotten their way for the last 100 years when it came to any form of class politics stuff. You can look at the Reagan administration, when it came with the air traffic controller strike, they laid off all those people. They didn't give a shit. Okay. But the thing is the reason why it's going to be different this go round is because they have stripped generations of future of home ownership or even settling and down and having families. Okay. And they have created a generation of people who quite literally have nothing left to lose, and they're losing more by the day. Okay. And when these people snap, when these people start, realizing that they're being screwed over and the ruling class is mocking and jeering their suffering, okay, and sneering at them, okay, I don't know how else to say it. It's not going to be pretty. Like, I say it over and over again, but, the ruling class is so arrogant and stupid and greedy that they don't see the powder keg that they are lighting here. Class politics is a ticking time bomb, and people's patience are coming at its limits. And so, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, is what I'm saying. Like, yes, he's having a positive impact, but in a very nasty way that's right around the corner.
Do you think members of the oligarchy might be killed or harmed as well?
Yeah, You know, and they know the writing on the wall. They can see the writing on the wall. You know, I'm saying this is a message. I'm just kind of I'm the birdie out of the coal mine on this, right? I'm just watching this stuff go down because I've looked at the numbers, and I see people, I see the discontentment, I see the suffering, and I look at people, and I realize that, like, just they're one insult away from like a wage rampage incident, and that's already happened a couple of times, like that one copycat attack where the dude was smiling in his mugshot after stabbing his CEO. Okay. Like, yeah, Luigi's having a positive impact, but I think that it's going to be having a positive impact in a very scary way.
And anarchistic impacts most of all, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Literally,
you for your
like
guys'
copycat.
input.
Literally in that copycat incident, you're just going to end up seeing like cases of, fuck it, we bowl. I have nothing to fucking lose. I'm going to do it.
I mean, so here's the
And then
thing.
that one,
Here's kind of the situation that we play into. If worst comes to the absolute worst, okay, let's say because at the end of the day, we cannot guarantee the success of a revolution. We can only guarantee that conditions will worsen and accelerate to the point where the possibility of revolution will be at its peak. Okay, that's all we can guarantee. But the success of the revolution, we don't know that. So if the revolution fails, we kind of fall into a very kind of fearful dilemma, because we exist as today. Okay, and you can look at everything that's happening since day one to now. Okay, since day one to now, everything he's done, these are repeating events, things that have happened, similar events happened during the rise of Hitler, before World War II, before the invasion of Poland. The difficulty now, we have two oceans on both sides of us. We have no neighbors fundamentally strong enough on our land to our north or to our south to be able to combat us. We play in this kind of role where there's no longer a Soviet Union, there's no longer a Britain, there's no longer a France that will ally together to stop what is exactly existing today. Now, yeah, we can say China will be the biggest threat, but I do want everybody to understand something. Why is China and why are China and Russia? Why are they allied? Why are they so buddy right now? It is because they see the bigger threat of U.S. imperialism as the prominent goal, prominent complexity. Remind you, Russia is imperialist as well. Russia is just as capitalistic as well, just as bourgeois or an oligarchical oriented as well. Russia, if it sees potential ally with America as even being slightly a possibility, do not hesitate for a moment to think that they will not turn their back on China. We are in a very dangerous pool, a pool of trying to figure out how class consciousness is going to arise in the most imperial core. We've never seen this happen before. This is what makes a revolution in America so different from the rest of the world, because they happen in third world underdeveloped conditions. This is new territory.
We're in absolutely new territory, and that's kind of the thing. That's why I say the lack of the originality and the lack of original thought on the left is actually doing it. But I also think, by that same token, something new is going to come. It's only a matter of time that's going to address the current condition and really tap into the resentment of the people. And like I said, it's not going to be pretty.
No liberation process in history has gone without sacrifice. Okay? That is the biggest thing that we have to realize as historical materialists. It has never gone without some degree of sacrifice or some degree of loss and struggle. Class struggle, the historic process of class struggle, has existed on this very premise. It has never been easy. Yeah. You know what? I'm just gonna go ahead real quick. I'm gonna pull up Twitter and see what I find, because honestly, we can continue this conversation, and we can just look at the sentiment of the modern right and the modern left. See just how kind of dissident both of them are. One's kind of trying to regurgitate like expired and outspoken, outdated ideas. The other is trying to completely be ignorant and ignore reality and continue to allow themselves to be controlled.
Here's the thing. I posted 2 images in the chat of, when the Luigi Mangione incident first happened, okay? Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh was like, this is going to be my daily regular content grind and stuff like that. Look at the dislike ratios. Yeah, no, they can't read the room to save their lives. And these are the respective comment sections. No, like public healthcare is popular to everybody. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on. Yeah, no, they're not even, hate to break it to you, buddy, but it's not just the left who is sick of this. Yeah, no, like that's what I was trying to tell Jake with the Adjust the Server or whatever, right? Like the political sentiment is here. Like public healthcare is popular, man. You can either kind of get with the times and recognize like what the people want, or you can kind of grip, man. And he wanted to go the other way direction, like the same with the Democrats who wanted to preserve the status quo because they're afraid of the big bad Trump. Okay, and more power to you. If you want to continue to fail and beat your head against the wall like an idiot, you're free to do so. Be my guest, man. If you want to keep beating your head against that wall and then expecting a different result, promising the status quo, but consistently getting a finger from the American people, be my guest.
Like that's the thing. The status quo doesn't make any progress. And they idolize themselves as the party and the side of progress. But at the end of the day, they are becoming the very sole reason why progress is not happening, and why we are actively seeing regression, while we are actively seeing.
It's the whole ratchet and clank effect, right? The Democrats get into office, they do absolutely nothing. The Republicans get into office, and they get like 2,000 executive orders. Notice that difference.
Look. It's funny. It's funny the amount of groups that popped up, the amount of the degree of the amount of universal healthcare groups, organizations, and so forth that popped up after the Luigi Mangione thing. These people, we can inspire them. We can lead them in a good, meaningful direction, because these are the people that have already felt everything at the core of themselves, and they are on the edge, on the peak of realizing, doesn't matter Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter left or right, it matters about the conditions that they face.
Yep.
The sad reality is, though, even though we could lead, a lot of us aren't.
And again, one thing that CPUSA, DSA, hell, even my party, PSL, one thing they all fall kind of down the drain with is electoralism. This faith in trying to preserve something so that fascism or something worse doesn't arise first. But that inevitably creates the conditions to where fascism and monopoly capitalism and the highest imperial stages occur anyways, because they are refusing to take the extra step that's necessary to do this. It reminds me of this one episode of the Do Program podcast that I listened to, and they were talking about how electoralism is fundamentally flawed in the sense that people have this kind of extraordinary, kind of opportunistic faith in trying to vote in socialism, which is funny because they talk about the revolution, they talk about how action needs to be taken, but at the same time, they absolutely do nothing on the ground, grassroots, to even build up any sentiment. Instead,
Oh yeah.
these people continue to be just like theory worms, right? And they just want to continue to
Oh.
like
Look at AOC, Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, okay? And these people were kind of propped up as the squad. They're going to do something, right? And they got completely co-opted. They got politically neutered, and they couldn't do anything effectively, right? They tried to do it from within, and that didn't work. Okay, and so that just goes to show that electoral politics, there's limited use cases. Like locally and state level, yeah, you can make some progress in the existing, liberal democracy, but forget the national level. You're never going to go anywhere, is because they have a very tight bureaucracy that's designed to frustrate political change.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I remember watching that because I talked with people back in 2020, and they're like, AOC is going to make such huge progress. Jimmy Dore, I'm not a fan of him anymore, is because he just became a reactionary grifter. When the COVID pandemic was going on, Jimmy Dore did a publicity campaign against AOC to basically push forward Medicare for all and have it was some kind of thing where they weren't going to vote for Nancy Pelosi if she didn't put Medicare for all on the floor and had a vote around it. Okay. Ended up not going anywhere, and that's kind of the funny part, is that Nancy Pelosi just continued to completely ignore AOC. Like that's the thing. It's designed to frustrate any form of like external politics. It's designed to preserve the existing system, and that's why I say it's very limited to actually bring about change through the existing system.
It really is, and sometimes the cope that these people kind of end up going into it, I think that there's this huge thing that's kind of going on where leftists they kind of cope with the fact that they don't have original thought and that they can't connect with the like distress of the population because they don't know how to really relate anything that they talk about to modern situations. And so sometimes you get
Yeah, that's actually Alex in the audience was talking about that earlier. I was watching his video because like he said it on his video when he was talking to a bunch of other Republicans about January 6th. Is that the left absolutely sucks at relating to regular people's struggles, while the Republicans are very good at tapping into the resentment of people. Okay, even if they can't fix the issues, even if they can't actually solve it, and their solutions are dog shit, in my opinion, right? But they're very good at understanding the existing situation. Like Donald Trump knew full well that people are not happy with the existing Biden administration and tapped into that resentment. And the Democrats coped about the whole eggs and fascism bullshit.
Exactly, and this is the issue. Hell, we can even take basic like more contemporary Marxist, and I'm going to be honest, right? I'm somebody who's actually more appreciative of more contemporary Marxists because actually at least they're actually doing an attempt or putting an attempt out there to create like new
Like
agendas. Yeah. At least they're
I
attempting
like
to do something.
I don't
Okay.
agree with market socialism. I'm actually opposed to it. I believe in a centrally
Right,
funded
right,
economy,
right,
but
but-
I can appreciate that he tries to get
but there is
original
one-
thought and argumentation.
There is one contemporary Marxist, for example, I kind of take issue with. A lot of people actually like him. I think we will all agree on this general issue with him. But fuck. His name.
You could find it.
Previous financier of Greece, dude.
Hey, I'm terrible with names too. Oh yeah, now I remember the person of the English Rebellion, Oliver Cromwell. That's what his name was. It wasn't Cornelius. Yeah, Oliver Cromwell.
Oh,
a religious
Giannis
extremist who
Varoufakis.
wanted to basically revolt against the king because he wasn't religious enough.
Okay. So Giannis Varoufakis, right? the author of the book Techno-Feudalism, right?
Oh, now I know who you're talking about. Yes, I know
Yes.
Jonas.
Yes. Okay, so one thing that I take up with people like him, and the issue that I have with him, is not the fact that he's not actually trying to have a modern analysis, but that his modern analysis is kind of based around this extreme skepticism and regressive kind of mentality of trying to. It's a misinterpretation, honestly, of historical processes that arise and collapse. He essentially tries to conflate that we don't exist in capitalism today, that we've actually proceeded beyond capitalism into the system of techno-feudalism, which pretty much assess that we do live under a new mode of production that is primarily oriented around a capitalist class that is presenting us and exploiting us through a sense of technological feudal relations, which
I call them the rent-seeking classes because they're kind of transitioning things to like a subscription/renters economy nowadays, where like you're going to be paying forever and you'll never own anything.
Right. But right, and then so this is the issue that I take up with is if that is the relation of the modern capitalist class, then we don't have feudal relations. This idea that feudalism exists in the most technological advancements is kind of bizarre. It's kind of it kind of conflates with how feudalism even arose in the first place. Feudalism is dead. The feudalist relations, the feudal mode of production, they are something of the past. And to say that we live in a more technological development of feudalism today is
Yep,
a
I disagree with
absolute
that take, too.
misinterpretation of how processes and systems evolve. Complete
Yeah, it makes for
misunderstanding.
good populist rhetoric. It doesn't make good for like an actual theoretical analysis. It's kind of like the whole
Exactly.
socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor stuff, right? It's good rhetoric politically because it relates to the ordinary person. I'm not against using it as political rhetoric, but once you bring people into the fold, then you should educate them, what it actually is and why you use that rhetoric because it resonated with people. It's like, wage slavery is actual slavery. Well, no, not historically. Like it's different, okay?
Right.
Wage slavery, actual slavery, you have one person owning another actual human person, okay? And so it's the direct appropriation of labor. The difference between that and say what we'd call like being a wagey, you're not taken care of by your master like in ancient Rome, for instance, right? Like that. Right, is because there were laws and Roman text that you had to provide certain things for your slave, and to some degree that also carried over into feudalism as well. And so what happened to the peasantry when feudalism was being uprooted by industrial capitalism is you had this giant landless, propertyless class of proletarians. The wage workers, who didn't own anything and who had to earn their bread to basically find their location. They were no longer guarded over by a feudal lord, and so the relationship is fundamentally different. I mean, it still makes good for political rhetoric when you're talking to somebody who's not a Marxist, right, or somebody who's not entrenched with these ideas to kind of use this rhetoric to kind of bring them into the fold and then explain to them after the fact, right?
Right, and so when you realize this, this is actually where people like this are useful, and this is why I'm not completely anti-contemporary Marxism at all, because contemporary Marxism touches on these sentiments of people and the conditions in which they face, which is vital to actually being able to convince these people of worthwhile progress. And that's where we connect with these kind of rural, suburbanoid, low ending of the blue collar workforce. That's where we can connect with them the most. It's
And if
only
you're
after.
suburbanoid, you're probably not a blue collar worker. A lot of blue collar workers, are just kind of wages at the end of the day. They just get paid like a little bit better. Suburbanoids
Right.
aren't blue collar most of the time.
Well, yes. I'm generally speaking of anything that is lower than middle class, right? Anything from low middle class to middle class. These are the people in which they're not going to be convinced unless you're touching them on the conditions that they fundamentally are conditioned by. One thing that I will point about the suburban area, because I no longer live in rural Texas anymore, where I moved from.
Yeah.
I now live in suburbanoid fucking Florida. There's a huge wealth disparity in my area where you can find a lot of people in the suburbs who are they're not even classified as middle class. The majority of the people who are not retired, who are not below the age of or not above the age of 60. If you're not above the age of 60, you're pretty much not middle class or higher. That's the issue. And so, like, these are the people, along with the rural farmers. These are, again, both of them share a interesting situation where if you do not touch them on the situations that they are conditioned by, you will never be able to convince them. That's where the left lacks. That's where contemporary Marxists like Yanis Varoufakis and others, for example, Justin Bastani, right? These people are very intriguing, and we can use what they've talked about, their rhetoric, to appeal to these people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the World Economic Forum, you will own nothing, right? The right was able to basically make a mockery of communists out of that, saying like, "Oh, the World Economic Forum are communist." You know, they did all these copes, like you will own nothing is because they destroy private property, right? You know, they're very good at using rhetoric to basically, you know, relate to people, right? And the funny part is when you talk about techno feudalism, okay? Because essentially, like what is happening with the World Economic Forum, like if they're still really going on, it looks like that's really transitioning into it, right? Is you have the creation of a perpetual rent-seeking class, okay? And the thing is that most people don't admit, especially on the right, is that that's just still capitalism. You still have a property class that's owning everything and making you rent from their existence, right? But the thing is like, but the left did not formulate the proper rhetoric to actually reach out to those people who saw that.
Absolutely, and these are real dilemmas in which we are facing today. I think that we're going to see an unfolding soon enough. We're going to see an unfolding. Revolutionary America is on the horizon, and I've been saying for probably consistently for the past like 8 months. I've been saying, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, right, revolution in my lifetime, I would have said impossible. Today, 2 to 10 years time.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, the thing is Trump's going to go through with his policies. It's not gonna make things better for America. If it does, great. Okay, whatever. You know, prove me wrong. But I don't think it will, and it's going to backfire, and it's going to backfire hard. So yeah, no, I'm probably going to hop off the stage at this point, is because you know it's already getting pretty late, and I'm going to head to bed. I might just like pass with the listeners, like kind of fall asleep, kind of thing.
I think that's a good idea.
You want to close off the stream now if everyone's going to bounce out?
Yeah, so I'll just wrap it up, I guess. Because I understand everybody's been here. We don't want to keep everybody up late like we have for the past couple of times because it's 1 o'clock. I don't want to be up until 3. But that's all right.
Yeah.
So just to wrap it up, right? Get engaged with who you can, touch them on the things that they're most concerned with, and educate them. Use contemporary Marxian sources because these people actually hold a lot of political populism that the left can use. Don't fall into the electoral trap that the broad left falls into, because that's only ever going to get you so far as
I would say, of course,
deluding
because it's going
yourself.
to get you hated by the political right. Because, like,
Right.
you know, the thing is the Democrats, you know, the right consistently accused the Democrats of propping up communism. And so the Democrats did nothing, and the political right still did that. And they were just hated even more, is because they just didn't fix any of the real concrete issues. And so they just essentially became a scapegoat because they're idiots.
So yeah, absolutely. We know, again, we know the historical constituted possibilities. We've seen it happen. We have the recordings of how revolution has emerged, how revolutionary sentiment in America can be utilized, and it's just a matter of time. Keep your eyes open. Continue to do what you can to fight against Trump's motives, because he's going to miserably fail. Mark my word, mark Alistair's word. This is only going to be the doom of cultural conservatism as a general political force. We are going to see the Democrats are a shattered party. Understand that. Both of the mainstream political parties are fundamentally shattered. The bourgeoisie has reached a stage in their own development where any sort of trying to put off a show is going to piss people off. They can't do this any longer.
Well, that's kind of the thing. Is now, like, when it comes down to it, it's like with Milei in Argentina. People were dreading his existence and going to office, right? I said, okay, well, now here's a better idea, right? It's because the left's unpopular. Let him go into office. Don't even stop him. It's because now the ball's in their court, and they have to demonstrate the superiority of their ideas. And at the end of the day, time will tell.
Yes,
it's the same with Trump. Okay,
time will tell.
He has to actually fix those issues, otherwise he's going to go down as the most unpopular president in history. Is because now there's no excuses.
Absolutely.
There's no Democrat Party holding him back. He won the majority tremendously over the election. He has the Senate and the House. The thing is that he has the popular will. He can have his way, and so now there is no excuse on why his ideas can't work if they don't work.
So yeah, I was trying to say earlier, right? You just reminded me. I was going to say earlier too. One thing that we should do, because remind you, the federal government workers right now, they are probably the most vital to being class allies. They are the intellectualist class, mind you. Again, Lenin and the Bolsheviks were greatly led by mainly intellectuals who educated the working class through contemporary sources of their time. They only educated the workers after the successful revolution. If we can create a class alliance with more modern and original thought, we can actually formulate a strong political successful movement that will combat the actions of Trump. They are the last line of defense because he already has a majority in the House. He has a majority in the Senate. He controls the Supreme Court via conservative bias and rhetoric, right? These government employees, these civil servants, being the intellectuals that they are, having the union that they have right now, that he's trying to destroy, they are the last line of defense. Do not think that just because a liberal establishment has allowed them to exist, that they are going to fundamentally support liberalism in the end. Because liberalism is dead. They recognize this. For the vast majority of them, they are done. They are fed up. It is just a matter of time. But yeah, that's it.
Yep.
That's all I have to say.
Alrighty. Thanks to everybody.
Revolutionary America is on its
stream.
way. Yep.
Hope you enjoyed what the topics that discussed at the stage, and hope to see you again another time.
Absolutely.
Y'all have a good night.